Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Welcome back to our YouTube friends and family. We were off YouTube for a few days because of medical misinformation. Go figure. But we are back, and thanks to all of you who reached out and said, hey, where's Superhuman Radio? We're back, and we will be back forever because I will never make the mistake of suggesting I know anything about science. Great show today. So we're going to talk about, computers have been involved in resistance training in the past, but only from the standpoint of counting reps, not really involved in the training itself, more like monitoring what you're doing, but they couldn't really influence how hard you worked. But that's all changed. And I got to tell you something. Not even 100 years from now, we're going to look back at these archaic barbells and dumbbells and even kettlebells and go, man, we wasted a lot of time. We could have built bodies stronger and bigger faster if we would have known about this. But you're going to learn about it today. And you know what they say, you can't unring a bell. So once you hear this, it will change the way you look at your training. Later in the show, we're going to talk about Kava. I used Kava about 5 or 6 years ago. A guy wanted to come on the show. He gave me these capsules. He said, take them before you go to sleep. You'll have the best night's sleep in your life. I noticed nothing. I took them during the daytime because I was told that I would feel relaxed. I noticed nothing. And I kind of thought, well, Kava was one of those things that either I was just a non-responder or it was bunk. Well, everything's changed. Kava is a world-renowned plant medicine, and we're going to understand today why some Kava works and some doesn't. Before we do any of that, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods. Ron Penna over at Legendary Foods actually introduced me to the machine we're going to talk about today. Legendary Foods has reimagined the Pop-Tart, and it's so much better than the Pop-Tart. It's called the Tasty Pastry. Less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality protein, 4 to 5 net carbs if you're a net carb person like me. I'm a low-carb lifestyle kind of guy, but maybe you're keto. This will work for you as well. This tastes like you are eating cake. And I say this at the beginning of every show, and I can prove it to you without you ever tasting it because kids love them. You cannot get a kid to eat a healthy, quote-unquote, protein bar. They'll take one bite out of it, and they go, oh, this sucks. I don't want to eat it. But you will have to wrestle these out of your kids' hands because they taste so good. And it's just a byproduct that they're good for you at the same time. If you don't believe me, check them out. If you don't like them, I'll buy them back from you. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10. I'm so convinced that you will love them that I will buy them back if you don't like them because I'll eat them. Don't worry about that. Now, without further delay, let me get my images up here. Welcome to the show, Mike Pullano. How are you?
Hey, I'm feeling great, Carl. Good to see you, brother.
So let's start out with your story. I'm a quasi-inventor, and I understand that the necessity is the mother of invention. It's a very, very true statement. Let's talk about at the beginning. You suffered an injury as an athlete, and it kind of laid you up, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, man. Throwing it back. Yeah, about 10 years ago, tore my Achilles tendon playing basketball.
And that's a very, very dangerous because a little bit more and it snaps, and then your life has changed forever. And obviously you didn't want to just become a couch potato, right? You had to find ways to train, right?
Yeah. So previous to you, the Achilles tendon, lifetime athlete, never got hurt, played football, baseball, basketball. We won state championships. We were really good. Trained really hard back then. You go into college, you go into adult life, some of those training methodologies kind of slip. You start doing some things the way you shouldn't. Like, I don't know, got into like box jumps and ballistic training and the
Yeah.
CrossFit movement. And you're like, yeah, this feels great. And to be honest, I was getting gains, but I didn't recognize what was actually happening from a strain to my body. I was training in the wrong shoes, Nike Shocks back in the day with like a raised heel.
Yeah.
So of course, when I go to my flat basketball shoes and I start putting it under load of, jumping, running, pushing off, my heel cords they weren't at the correct length. I'd shortened them over time and they got real tight and they got real angry at me. And then it just popped one day. So once that happened and you're pretty much done for in terms of movement for about 5-6 months until you can actually start walking around without a boot. And even then you're still probably another 6 months away from, seriously thinking about like running and doing some kind of aggressive training. You start to rethink some things. And I had an opportunity to do that. And that's when I first found high intensity resistance exercise, because I thought I was training correctly. But clearly I wasn't, because why would my body fail me like that if I was doing, this is basic basketball. I'm not like running marathons and doing anything overly strenuous. And I wanted to make sure I was resilient enough forever after that, so that I never had to go through that injury or any injury again. And that's where I found high intensity resistance exercise. This is super slow training, Nautilus training, Doug McGuff Body by Science, like all kind of that methodology of how do we do really hard work with muscle using a weight stack machine and basically do it in about 90 seconds, 120 seconds per set and be done with it. So super time efficient too, but very intense. And that was kind of like what led me ultimately to find ARX.
And so that what you're talking about is the time under tension principle.
Correct.
It's not about ballistically throwing the weight around. It's about controlling the weight and utilizing the resistance for as long as possible in a single rep.
Correct.
Now,
time under tension would typically be like 10 seconds on the way up and 10 seconds on the way down. That's an average. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but that's a really long rep, and the tension is very high for a long period of time.
Now, most people start out with too much weight when they think, "Oh, I'm going to give this a try." You've got to start out with a fraction of your maximum weights when you do this kind of work, because it is so grueling. But the other problem with it is selecting the right weight and not leaving anything on the table. So if you go too light, you really don't get what you want. If you go too heavy, you can't do it. You need something that intuitively adjusts for the dynamic range of strength that the muscle will produce throughout the whole range, the whole travel of that weight. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And that's impossible to do as a human with a weight in your hand. I mean, it just is, because there's a point in that dynamic arc, let's say, where you can handle X amount of weight. And then there's a point in that dynamic arc where you can handle 2X. And then there's a point where you can only handle half of an X, but you still have this static weight in your hand. So you're not really exploiting the movement properly. Would you agree with that?
Yes. The way I like to I think in examples. So if you think about a bench press, when you first lift the weight off the rack, let's say it's 100 pounds, it's not hard right there. It's not really hard on the way down either. It's only hard like right at your chest. And so your leverage has changed, because that's what happens when we move through a joint angle and we get that bar closer to us, and our shoulders and our elbows are bent. And that's hard at the chest level. And then I get it through that range and I'm like, oh, I grin and I groan and I get, 2 seconds maybe of tension there where it's difficult. And then it starts getting easier again as I go back up to the top. So you just see this kind of play out over and over again. You just walk into any gym or lift a dumbbell and do a bicep curl. It's only hard in a certain portion of the range of motion. And ideally what we would want it is for it to be difficult the whole time and appropriate the whole time in terms of the right resistance. So if it's too difficult at the chest at 100 pounds, maybe it should be 80. and then maybe it should be 150 at the top. You know, these are the kind of things where we've been limited as a society by the tools that we're using. Like this tool, the weight, it doesn't change. It just is what it is. And we figure out all sorts of creative ways with drop sets and chains and bands and friends pushing down on the bar at certain points and helping you lift up the bar at other points in the range. Those are the kind of things where, yeah, it's like the elusive obvious. It's like, of course we need something that adapts, because we as individuals, our strength is changing, but our tool that we use stays stagnant.
And to answer Taylor C's question, he says, is this similar principle behind the science, the X-bar band system? First of all, the science of the X-bar band system was stolen from powerlifters who wanted to add weight at their strongest point. Remember this, right? Because if you're doing a bench press with bands on the bottom, you're not really challenging yourself at the sticking point where it's down here. You're getting heavier and heavier as you go out. So I would say that with bands, while they are effective for certain things, there are certain movements that bands are effective for across the gamut of all exercises. They are lacking because they can't do what we're going to talk about, this computer guided system. This computer guided system will give you everything you can handle at every millimeter of the travel of that weight. The bands, they have a predictability. You know that the further you stretch them, the harder they get. And then when you come back, they get easier. So no, it's not. And I'm not jumping on John Jackwish. I mean, it's a great product if you have limited space, you want to travel, you want to be able to do certain things in a hotel room, but it's not what we're talking about. But stay tuned, because we're going to show you something that's so exciting that I predict that maybe 50 years from now, we're going to look back and go, wow, man, this is the only way to train. I'm being sincere when I say this. Look, I want to be honest. I was a non-believer. I'm a meathead, right? I like putting plates on bars. It looks so impressive. I like grunting. But this machine in 13 minutes gives me an exhausting workout that I cannot duplicate in the gym no matter what I do. So we'll talk more about this in a second. So talk about how you developed this machine. What made you think computers, motors, these would really work well?
Yeah, so if you kind of go back to solving the core problem that we're talking about right now, it's like you need a resistance that changes according to what our bodies are capable of. And the other thing about that bands question is, let's say it's the perfect amount of resistance, for one rep up and down, but what do you do when you start fatiguing? Like the band's still the same, adjustment every time. Like unless you have a magical weight fairy or a magical band fairy that can like actively change bands while you're doing the workout, like it's still going to be inappropriate at some point in time. It'll be either inefficient, ineffective, or inappropriate. And so when we're talking about that core idea that we're trying to solve for, people have been trying to solve this for 60 years. This goes back to Arthur Jones in like the 70s, 50 years, when he first made the Nautilus cam. You can just look that up. I don't need to explain here the details of it. The point is he needed to vary the resistance because he knew that this was a problem with the human body and ultimately a stagnant weight. And so they started that journey in the 70s and the 80s. And then there were a couple of machines that decided to put some motors on exercise equipment, but the technology was very crude, and overall, like the computer system just didn't really exist back then. So it wasn't until about 2010 when we started actively developing prototypes of ARX did we actually have the ability to put the right type of mechanical system, motor, and the right type of computer system, Windows-based computers, tablets, touchscreens, that kind of thing, when we could actually see, data feedback of what was happening while you were fighting this motor. At any point in time, you can go fight a motor right now. You could go to a shipping yard and go fight a forklift and do an overhead press. I don't recommend it, but you could do that. But the thing is, like, you don't have the feedback. You don't actively understand what is happening during that workout. And that's where the marriage of motorized system and computer controlled is what created ARX. And, we've just innovated on that for the last 10 years.
you also monitor and do some calculations. How did you come up with the formulary for intensity, for instance, or inroads into what was happening with the muscle? Where did you get that? Did you guys create that in a lab, or was there data out there already that helped you start the process?
Yeah, I mean, that term intensity, if you see it in our software, just basically means how much effort, how much force output did you do over time.
Right.
So I always describe it like to people who aren't familiar. If I tell you to go run a mile, that's your total output, right? And you run a mile in 10 minutes. And then tomorrow you run the same mile, same amount of output is done tomorrow, and you run it in 5 minutes. Which mile was more intense?
Right.
Obviously the 5-minute mile. You still only ran a mile, but you did it in half the time. And so when we think about how much force output are you creating in like a 1-minute set, let's say, if you do twice the amount of effort in that same minute that you did last week, that's a much more intense set. So that's kind of the best way that we've been able to apples to apples compare, two sets that may be slightly different. Maybe one day you did 5 reps, the other day you did 6 reps. But you might have put more effort into those 5 reps yesterday than you did the 6 reps today. And there's got to be some way to compare those two. And that's typically what we use as intensity.
So let's talk about how I've adjusted using my ARX machine. And I have the Alpha, which is
Correct.
The ideal machine for someone who wants to get one for their own personal use. So I stole a page out of my powerlifting days, and I like longer rest, but I enjoy the 7-second up and 7-second down process of the rep. I feel that really allows me to expend as much force as possible for as long as my muscles can give it, and in both directions, which the eccentric portion of using the ARX machine is, it really requires, if you really want to use the machine properly, heroic effort. In the bench press, for instance, I'm pushing as hard as I can for 7 seconds, but now when it gets to the other end, now I have to fight. I have to fight to slow that thing down because it wants to, and really, I would venture to say, I had Dr. Malin Watfi on my show maybe 9 years ago, complete game changer. His book is called Of Doves, Diplomats, and Diabetes, and he talks about an amount of risk that has to be experienced in training in order to cause the body to shift how it uses the food that you eat post-workout. And he talks about having a ball that has a weight in it, and you have to be careful it doesn't hit you, and you get out of its way and try to catch it. But this feels like risk, even though it's not, because I cannot get injured by the ARX machine because all I have to do is give up, and it's game over. But as long as I am trying to resist that weight coming down and force against it, I feel a sense of risk. I feel a sense of, wow, like this feels like it's crushing. It wants to crush me, but it's not. And this is the important thing I want to. You can't get crushed by it. You just have to stop pushing, and everything stops. There's nothing out there that does this. So as a result, I have employed 25-second rest in between reps because I want to be as strong and recovered as possible. I'm even going to try longer because the beauty of the RX machine is it gives you a readout. You can see how much force you did that workout with. You can compare it to another workout. You can say, I'm going to go from 25 to 40 seconds in between and just see what happens. And you find out, oh my God, I'm so much stronger. But what do you think about longer rest? Now, obviously the intensity shifts because you're taking more time to do that work. Any ideas if I'm missing out on something by doing it that way?
No, I was just looking at your stats before this call, just because I could see all your workouts. So you did, 3 days ago, whatever. You did 6 reps of chest press, and you had exactly what you said: 7 seconds positive, 7 seconds negative, 25-second rest. Okay. In total, those 6 reps took you 3 minutes and 32 seconds. Right. So that's your whole entire set. At which point you did a eccentric maximum just for a moment of 208, and then you did concentric maximum of 129. So let's just call it like, I don't know, 80% better.
Right.
Then the other thing is that I can see that you fatigued yourself on the very last rep, your 6th rep. You were, banging out one rep every 25 seconds. And by the time you were done, your eccentric max had fatigued 16%, and your concentric max fatigued 16%. Which is really, that's like probably the bare minimum threshold that I would say is like, that's a good point that you want to stop at, or at least like cross before you get, you want all those benefits of exercise, the cascade effect of hormones and stuff. You need to create that risk in your body, that sense of risk,
right,
that sense of damage. That's the whole point of exercise. So I could see that. You can see that live in the moment. And if you were still hitting your maxes at the last rep, I would say do more reps. Like, keep going. You need to push yourself to get to that level of meaningful resistance, meaningful tension, meaningful damage on the body, so that your body feels like there's something risky going on out here. And then it adapts and it changes. So this is a great way to just monitor that live on the spot and dynamically to know, like, is my steak cooked? When do I take it off the grill? 6 reps, 8 reps, 3 reps? It's really, really, really valuable to have all that information. So I just wanted to underscore that as you were talking about that for any of the listeners. It's like we see all that. We can see that play out live and then compare that from set to set, week to week, month to month.
And now those were 2 days back to back. I used the machine. And I know when Jim first told, he says, look, you don't want to overdo it with this machine. You probably don't want, and I'm still going to the gym 5-6 mornings a week. And then I'm coming home quite often and doing this in the later in the day as my 2 a day. So look at my pull. There's 2 different pulls there. One is a bicep, but it still says a row, but I put a note on it. And the other one, I started doing the wide row where I put the handles straight up and down, and I'm pulling like I'm pulling a prowler almost. And it's a wide row. Do you see that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's all. What is it that you're looking for?
No, did I peter out on the last rep like you saw in the bench press? My bench press is my worst move. It's my worst. My shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at typical fatigue profiles, this is in our software we call it inroad, which really just means fatigue. So if I do 100 output on my first eccentric negative, and then I finish on my last rep and I do 80 output, that's a 20% fatigue. We can see that. But yeah, you did on that one that you were talking about, I think one of the rows, you fatigued 16% again by the last rep.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
You're crossing that meaningful threshold. I think your original question was like, is it better or worse?
Longer rest in between reps. Is it better or worse?
Yeah. So it's like different strokes for different folks. Whatever your goal is, we can adapt our programming to achieve that. So in this case, you're trying to get maximum force output, every little bit of rest that you can, cycle that ATP and hit it again, right? It's kind of the goal you're looking for here. And that's cool. That's a total legit way to do it. Absolute value there. And you're going to get the max out of every rep. But your set lasted 3.5 minutes long, right? And that sounds still really, short in terms of time. But generally speaking, if you're trying to like maximize strength improvements, muscle mass, all that kind of stuff, including metabolic stress. So I want this to be the most taxing, give myself no break, just clear out as much glycogen in my muscles as I possibly can. I do no rest. So I would knock out 6 reps of this in about 1.5 minutes.
Right.
So you take half the time. And so if you have the time, and I think you do because it's in your house, but if you have the time and you just want to maximize every bit of force output per rep, yeah, longer rests are great. And we could just program all of that in, and you can have a workout that looks like that. And then one day you're like, you know what? Maybe I had a little bit too much cake at the wedding last night. Maybe I want to clear some glycogen. And then we just remove all the rest time, and that's a different workout on the software. But it's a tap of a button that says, today I'm going to do a long rest workout, a short rest workout, 6 reps, 12 reps, whatever your thing is. We just tap it and we go. We don't think about anything else. We don't think about what resistance to choose today. We don't think about any of that stuff. All that stuff is outsourced to the computer system.
And the other thing that I like about this is this realization that I had that every single workout doesn't have to be an all-out workout, because you can, on the days where I train in the morning and then I come home and I want to do a sesh with the ARX machine, I'm pushing, but I'm not pushing all out. And I can see that. I can govern myself. I can say, well, this session has to be lighter because I'm getting close to overtraining. But you still, one of the things I've noticed, and I bet you've heard this from every client that uses one, in 6 reps, you end up with an insane pump that lasts for hours. Like it's so noticeable that, like, I look at myself before I train, and then I train, and then I look at myself again, and I'm lumpier than I was before because my muscles are pumped. And you would think that in order to achieve a pump like that, you've got to do a lot of reps. Oh, you got to do a lot of reps, got to do a lot. But you don't. What have we gotten wrong about the pump phenomenon that ARX now shows? Hey, you don't have to do, 22 sets, 16 reps per body part to get a pump.
Yeah, I would say just generally, we're not able with the weight system to push ourselves out of the gate, first set, first rep, at our voluntary maximum. You got to work up to it because gravity is a bitch. Gravity might sneak up, tear your shoulder out if you're not prepared. And so we slow play our way up to the intensity that we know we're capable of with a weight. This is why you need like a couple warm-up sets until we start the PR and do all this kind of stuff. That's fine. It's necessary as part of that. With ARX, as soon as you start pushing, whatever you're capable of in the moment, rep 1, straight cold off the couch, the machine just matches you. And it's matching you 100% of the range of motion. So it's hard the whole time. And because of that, my cardiovascular system is being demanded upon at a very high level, like right away. But it's also important to point out, like, I'm safe the whole time because it's only matching what I'm capable of. My first 1 or 2 reps of almost every set are not my maxes.
Right.
It's like the 3rd rep, the 4th rep, because my body is taking time to neurologically prime itself, cardiovascularly prime itself with the blood. But we could do this like really quickly, way quicker and way safer than we can ever do in the gym. And so that's what you're feeling when you get on there. Is boom, cardiovascular system's getting taxed and it's getting pushed at its voluntary maximum. And all of a sudden the heart's moving and the blood's flowing and everything's swole. And so it just takes so much longer to do with the weight because we're slow playing it because we're afraid of what might happen if we move too quickly with it. If we jump up in resistance, it might bite us.
But the ARX machine doesn't bite. That's the beauty of it. Like I said, if you don't have it, you just stop. You just stop pushing. I want to take a break, and I want to come back on the other side of the break and talk about why this particular discussion is really important in today's world. We talk about functional strength. Functional strength doesn't have warm-up time. So I want to do this. I want to take one quick commercial break. Before we do that, I want to put this up. There's a QR code in front of you if you're watching. You can shoot it, and you'll be taken right to the page. You're looking at the screen on the left that I look at when I'm training, and I can see what I'm doing and how hard I'm working and how long I've been working. It's just phenomenal. There's nothing, you know what? If you're part meathead, part geek, you will want to sleep with your ARX machine. You'll fall in love with it, and you won't want to go to bed with anybody. You want to stay on your ARX machine. The beauty of it is you switch it on, you train for 13 minutes, you're done, you go with your life. I mean, it leaves so much more time to live your life while getting strong. Try that QR code, and it will get you there. And we're going to take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about functional strength, and it's real me. Superhuman Radio. Plant medicine has become all the rage for mental optimization. Now there's an ancient plant medicine rapidly growing in popularity that experts believe might just be the alcohol of the future. It's called True Kava. Kava is a natural food-grade elixir that has been used for over 3,000 years by South Pacific Islanders as safe, non-addictive alternative to drugs and alcohol. By naturally boosting the brain's main feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, Kava provides you with both increased relaxation and mental clarity at the same time. True Kava is a new form of stabilized full-spectrum traditional kava that is third-party lab tested for quality and safety. Go to shrnetwork.biz/true kava, and that's TRUKAVA, all one word, and use code SHR for 25% off today. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHKCU, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expression of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. Restore Cell's stem cell awakening serum, along with their other products, contains potent formulations of blue copper peptides and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. Remodel your skin today. C60, also known as Buckminster fullerene, is the most powerful, most versatile antioxidant in the world. It's been shown in studies to double the lifespan of rodents. We all know the importance of taking antioxidants to slow aging, reduce inflammation, and improve mitochondrial function and energy production. But there are literally hundreds of antioxidants that would cost you thousands of dollars to take every day. I take one. I take C60 from C360 Health. Revive and Rejuvenate are two blends that harness the power of C60. Don't waste another minute. Go to shrnetwork.biz/revive and use the code SHR for 15% off and free shipping inside the United States today. If you'd like a shortcut to better sleep, more energy, and calmer, more stable moods, then you should make sure you're supplementing with Magnesium Daily. Let me tell you why. About 75% of people are magnesium deficient. This deficiency can lead to higher levels of anxiety, irritability, trouble sleeping, and low energy. It can even contribute to foot and leg cramps while you sleep. Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers is the single best magnesium supplement in the world. Simply take 2 capsules before you go to bed, and you'll be amazed by the improvements in your mood and energy levels, and how much more rested you feel when you wake up. I take Magnesium Breakthrough every night, and I sleep better because I use it. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use the code SHR10 during checkout to save 10% off and get free shipping. Check it out.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
You are listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Hey, welcome back. We're talking about the ARX machine. You can go to shrnetwork.biz/ARX to learn more. And I want to put this comment up before we talk about what I want to talk about, which is preparedness. And this comes from Taylor C. He says, 46 grand, you bet I'm going to be sleeping with it. But look, I've said on the show for the past month, you need to learn about the ARX machine at this point in time. Maybe it's not in your budget to buy one for your home. The economies of scale change prices over time. The more product the ARX sells, the more they build, the cheaper they become. And who knows, maybe there's a home version somewhere in the future. I have to believe that there is. But really who we're talking to with today's show is the personal trainer. Because as Mike said to me off air, they have personal trainers that buy one machine and they get a little space somewhere in a strip mall somewhere, and they put it in a little studio gym, and they train their customers using the ARX machine. And here's the beauty of it. You don't have to train your customers frequently, maybe once a week. You don't have to train your customer as long, 13 minutes. They're in and out. But here's the best part. They love you because they actually see results. You know, Orange Theory and all these other places, they're just foo-foo gyms where people fool themselves and say, oh, I have 36 points today. I hit my goal. But their bodies never change. They don't look any different. They don't gain any muscle. They're too focused on the inconsequential. If you end up with 50, 60, 70 clients training, less time, less work for you, fewer times per month, and paying you to see results that they actually see, and they not only do they not quit, but they tell their friends about it. This is a business in a box. They really are. And granted, Taylor says, I need to re-up my training certification. I smell a write-off, LOL. And it is a write-off, I bet. I'm not an accountant, but, you know, you buy something that for your business, there are tax value to that. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's really who we're talking about to right now, right, Mike?
Absolutely. So, you know, we really launched the most recent product line in 2016. And so many of our customers, probably 75% of our customer base, are either existing businesses. So this could be a chiropractor, physical therapist, you know, rehab center, you know, Longevity Institute. We have a couple of those. Or this is somebody who's like, I see the vision. Like, I see that this is the future. I understand that this is a better product pretty much in all the ways. And I know that if I get 20, 50, 100 customers, like, I'll pay this thing off, no problem. And so that's exactly what our customers have done. And, you know, we have 150 businesses around the world that are utilizing ARX in some form or fashion to service their client base. And sometimes that is literally just one ARX machine in a room where people pay, you know, $60 a workout, just as they would for personal training, except they get quantified results. And they're also a very differentiated business compared to every other personal trainer out there who's doing, you know, quote unquote, functional training and TRX bands or a CrossFit type workout or whatever they're doing. You, as a business owner who has ARX, are immediately separating yourself from everybody else, and you can prove that your type of training, this ARX training, is improving at 30%, 40%, whatever the case is over the course of a few months. And that's something that trainers can't really do. They're never going to get these strength improvements that you're going to see on an ARX machine, because it's going to take 3 months for them to even teach you how to do a 1 rep max deadlift. If you have no experience in the gym, you can do 1 rep max leg presses today, right now. The numbers might be pretty low, but you're still working at your maximum in that moment. And that is priceless. When I think about it, that's saving me so much time as an individual. I don't have to go through this long learning curve. I can show up today and this machine will give me exactly what I need. And you, as a trainer, you look like a god. You choose the best weight, putting quotes on that, every time. You're like the best weight guesser of all time in personal training world. And that's really where you get like good trainers versus bad trainers, is the people who understand progressive overload, people who understand how to modulate intensity from day to day and ask you the right questions and parse out your recovery. You don't need to do any of that. I train people off the street who I've never met, and I don't ask them any questions, and they get the best leg press of their life instantaneously. They look at me like I'm, you know, some genius, and I'm over here just kind of like telling them to do impossible things like stop the machine, and they walk away happy. And so that's it's really a paradigm shift for businesses.
And I want to add something to that. No injuries. No, a personal trainer's worst nightmare is having a client do something and they get hurt. Personal trainer feels horrible because they were hired to avoid that, because people can hurt themselves on their own without paying $60 an hour. They don't need you to guide them into an injury. You can't hurt yourself. Again, if you decide you're in a dangerous spot, you feel like, oh, I can't handle this, you just stop pushing. That's it. You ride the machine back. It's done. And they even have an emergency shutoff switch on the right, but you'll never use it because if you're pressing, if you're pulling, and you feel like, oh no, I'm going to hurt myself, you just stop. You can't do that with a loaded bar.
Correct.
You can't. I mean, I've torn enough hamstrings to know that the weight is the weight is the weight, and once you're in motion, it doesn't forgive you if you weren't prepared. It doesn't.
From a business perspective, because injuries are something you want to avoid at all costs, you might not take certain clientele on. You might not take somebody on who's coming off rehab. You might not take somebody who's very feeble, like an elderly client. The elderly clientele love ARX for that exact reason that you just stated. They feel for the first time ever when they're doing resistance exercise like they're in control, like they have the keys to what's happening right now. And that is so empowering for a generation who basically never did resistance exercise. And even if they did, they weren't doing it at this level of intensity. And we have 80-year-olds that do ARX and they love it. And they show up once a week. They're not going to look like bodybuilders anytime soon, but their goals are different. They need to make sure their bones are healthy for, the rest of their life. They may, if they fall for whatever reason, they have to be able to grab the handle and have their muscles respond so they don't slip and fall even further. Like, these are basic, things in life that are required. And my parents are 73 years old. They don't do any resistance exercise. And it's because they don't trust a trainer and they don't trust a gravitational weight to be their friend. It can go wrong quickly. And for a lot of people, it only needs to go wrong once. And you write off resistance exercise forever. And you just stick to walking, jogging, maybe some cycling. And those aren't the things that are going to build muscle mass and bone mineral density. Like, you need the valuable resistance that comes from resistance exercise. But where are you going to find that if every time you step into a gym, you get hurt, or every time you step into the gym, you're afraid of what might happen?
We talked about this many years ago, a study that showed that squatting, just squatting with minimal weight for postmenopausal women reestablished bone mineral density in the hips to a greater degree than hormone replacement therapy or any of the bisphosphonates out there. And so people need to do weight-bearing movements. This is resistance training. But as you say, most of them are not going to do it. There's another study that a friend of mine said he's sending me that just showed that 80% of the falls that elderly people happen and then break their hip, actually their hip broke first, and that's why they fell. They get out of a chair and, something went wrong, and bang, they hit the floor. And forensically we go, you broke your hip when you hit the floor. No, they broke their hip and then they hit the floor. And all of that could be solved by having them do resistance training, this leg press. Every elderly person should get on and again, they're not going to press harder than they can. So it's not that it's challenging in a sense, but it's challenging with this like safety net. Like, hey, don't worry. If you can't do it, you just stop. This may be one of the most important bits of information that people break their hip fall first and then fall that will cry for people doing more to increase bone mineral uptake as they age. And I don't see them going into the gym and squatting. I mean, I know there's people on Instagram, he's 87 years old and he's pulling 300 pounds. I mean, God bless those people. I hope I'm one of them someday. But the reality is, you don't have to be that person. No, you don't have to stand on the sidelines. You can get in an ARX machine and get that workout that's going to keep you from breaking your hip and then falling.
We're going after the 99.9% of the world, Carl. Like, this is not, it's great when bodybuilders and some people, put up crazy numbers on our stuff. Like, that's cool, but they're going to be fine either way. They're going to be training until they're 80. They're going to be that very small percentage of people. But what do we do about everybody else who's kind of written it off because they got injured that one time at a CrossFit workout, or they tore their Achilles 10 years ago and they never really felt fully safe to get back into training? Like, there's just story after story after story of people who use ARX machines and they say, oh my God, this is the first time that I have felt safe to work this hard, maybe in sometimes their entire life. But a lot of times they relate it directly back to a situation where, like, since I got in that car crash and my back got screwed up, or since I broke my leg, or whatever the case was. That's just like this moment in time when their bodies they like betrayed them in some way. Like, oh wow, I'm mortal. I'm not a 16-year-old kid who could just bounce off walls and have nothing happen. Sometimes you just literally bend down to pick up the groceries and like, there goes your back. And then you never do exercise again.
All right.
It could be 10, 20, 50 years. And so if you don't have an easy on-ramp for people that they feel safe to get back to this very, very essential part of life, which is resistance training, resistance exercise, then we're doing everybody a disservice. Like by saying this is your only option. You go to CrossFit and use weights. You could go to Orange Theory and do cycling. That's it. It's binary choice, or nothing, or do nothing.
Right. We got to take a break. I just want to put this up again. If you are a personal trainer or you work at a gym, you really need to get them to look into this device because this could be a game changer for your clients. I see established gyms putting one of these in their gym just the same way they put a Smith machine in. But the difference is people don't just walk up to it and get on it. Now they have to go to the personal training staff and sign up to use it. And that's a big deal for gyms because I can tell you right now, gyms struggle to keep their personal training staff employed because a lot of people don't want to sign up for you to teach me how to do a standing curl or, a lot of moves they see people do. I can do that. I'll do that. They have to have your assistance. This is absolutely a funnel to catch more clients that want to be involved with your personal training staff. I see every gym needing this. The QR code is up there. Scan it, go to the page and learn. And even if you're not going to buy one, you need to learn about this machine because there will be one in your future at some point in time. There's no doubt in my mind. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. More than 240 million Americans take supplements daily in pill form, but poor nutrient absorption means the promised results are rarely achieved. Healthy Cell uses a clinically proven patent-pending gel delivery system that increases absorption by 165% over pill form. Go to shrnetwork.biz/healthycell. That's HEALTHYCELL today and use the code SHR to save 20% off your purchase of Healthy Cell supplements. Over 30 million men experience a form of erectile dysfunction. Meet Eddie, a device designed to help men strengthen and maintain their erections. Based on 2021 clinical trials, over 95% of men experience positive results wearing Eddie instead of relying on costly pills and experiencing side effects. I checked out Eddie by Giddy at shrnetwork.biz/Eddie. Eddie offers free resizes and the product works. Sign up for a subscription and save $20 off your first device with promo code SUPER20. That's SUPER20. A 60-day guarantee can't be beat. Treat ED with Eddie. Eddie by Giddy at shrnetwork.biz/Eddie. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. Have you been struggling to achieve results in the gym? Trouble sleeping through the night? Overwhelmed with stress or anxiety? Look no further than Infiniwell supplements. They have designed products to address specific needs like muscle growth, hormone balance, sleep, and anxiety from the first use. Infiniwell helps you live well. Go to shrnetwork.biz/bewell, that's BEWELL, and use code SHR20 and start living well today. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that I have struggled to give up coffee for years. Coffee has destroyed my gut and it's impaired my health. Well, I haven't had coffee in months thanks to a product called Magic Mind. Magic Mind is the first nootropic blend I actually feel working. One shot and I'm good all day long. My memory is crystal clear and I'm able to function and have great focus without coffee or caffeine for that matter. If you want to try a product that really works, if you're like me and you want to give up coffee forever, or you just need something occasionally that will help you lift the brain fog, Magic Mind is your product. I promise you that this product you will feel when you use it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/magicmind, all one word, and use the code SHR for a whopping 20% off your first order. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back. We have Cameron George in the green room. He's going to be coming on at the top of the hour to talk to us about Kava. If you're like me and you've experienced no benefits from Kava because it's in pills, there's a reason, and we're going to talk about that later. Right now, we're talking about the ARX machine with Mike Pullano. So one of the things I want to talk about earlier that we'll do now, we hear a lot of people talk about functional strength. We hear about people talk about preparedness. I would offer that nothing is going to build that kind of strength like the ARX machine. And here's why I say this. So, yes, granted, your first two reps may not be the maximums you can handle right off the box, but you're going from, as Mike said before, so eloquently, sitting on the couch to handling a very heavy weight. And even that first and second rep, which typically isn't the strongest rep, is going to continue to get stronger over time, just as the other reps get stronger. So I would offer that if you really are somebody who wants to be able to be explosive very quickly out of the box. I traveled to Israel right after September 11th, and I was scared. And I was sitting on an El Al flight, and I was thinking, well, the oxygen tank is over there. I can grab that and swing it like a baseball bat. These are real life scenarios. I mean, Mike is smiling, but we all go through life if we are aware of our surroundings, thinking about these things like, wow, what if this happens? I have a funny vibe here. So no training at the gym where you do 2 warm-up sets and then you get a little heavier and then you can't do warm-up sets when somebody's in your face. You have to explode. Where do you think you're going to develop the most explosive on the dime strength? ARX. I just realized it when you said that because it's true. I walk down, there's no warm-up. I sit in the seat. My first rep is everything I can give it at that moment. Sure, the second rep gets a little stronger, and by the third and fourth rep, I'm strongest. And by the fifth and sixth, I start to trail off. But you can't help but lift all of those as you train more. So that means your first rep off the box cold is going to be a lot stronger than it is today. And that is where the preparedness and functional strength really comes from. You want to opine on that, Mike?
Yeah. So maybe a good example would be, we talked about earlier, falls in elderly people, but really just falls in general. So what happens when you fall? The hope is that you catch yourself and that you put your hand out and the force from the railing or the floor, or whatever your hand grabs, goes through your muscles and everything can be absorbed and it keeps your body upright. Now, for somebody who's not strong or somebody who lacks the ability to create force quickly, in that case, they grab the handle, they grab the railing, and their body can't react fast enough. And so their body ends up completing the fall all the way to the ground, and then they hit the deck, right? What we would want is we want to create a resilient, like, shock absorber system that has the ability to take a hit, absorb that force, have the muscles contract, have the bones all maintain their integrity, and be able to push back at the appropriate level so that I don't hit the deck. I don't fall. I don't break my hip. Well, in your case, you're saying they break their hip before that. That's new.
But with that, yeah, go ahead.
But the same thing with like athletes, right? If I'm making a rebound for basketball, and most injuries happen in basketball on the way down. It's not on the way up. So it's absorbing the force as you hit the ground. If your body, if your system, your shock absorbers, your muscles, your ligaments, your tendons, if those are not capable enough to handle that force that's coming from the ground, something will break in the chain, or you'll crumble to the ground, and then something might break. So that's life. That's the whole game. It's just giving and absorbing force. And when we are not resilient enough, we break. We get injured. I tear my Achilles tendon playing basketball. I could squat a whole bunch of weight, but like the resilience of my whole system at that time was not good enough to handle coming down in a rebound. And then pop, there goes my Achilles tendon. It's like, what happened? Like, why was I so capable for the rest of my life and all the other sports I ever played? And then all of a sudden, when I was 28 years old or whatever, I couldn't handle that force. And then my Achilles explodes. That's weird. What happened in the chain and the system that made it less resilient, less capable to create the force to save the day in that rebound? And that's really what we're trying to build with whatever you want to call functional strength, is the ability to interact with our world and not get injured. The ability to interact with our world and move heavy objects and lift the garbage can. That's what we're trying to build as just resilient individuals. Yeah, it's cool when you look better naked and you have muscles and biceps and stuff like that, but like none of that matters if you can't pick up your kid off the ground without your back going out.
Right. I want to plug the product again. We're coming to the end of this interview. I'm asking people to stick around at the top of the hour when we start talking about Kava. You can go to shrnetwork.biz/ARX. If you are a personal trainer and you want to start your own gym, this is the way to do it. They offer financing too, to make it easy for you to get into one of these. If you're a person who has accumulated a certain amount of wealth and you want to treat yourself on something that will repay you for the rest of your life, get one for your home gym. And, I have lots of problems with my legs. I have a neurological disorder. My sister had it. It actually killed her. It's not going to kill me because I'm working very hard against it, but my leg strength isn't what it used to be. I used to post videos of me leg pressing 1,500 pounds with regularity and squatting and deadlifting as supersets. I can't do that stuff anymore. But what I am confident now is that I have an ARX machine at home where I can train a few times a week and gently push my legs harder and harder without the risk of injury, which is important to me at this point. I just want to finish the race now. I'm 63 years old. And it gives me a great sense of hope. When you were talking a minute ago, I was thinking, I really need to start leg pressing a couple times a week. I'm afraid to, so I'm prideful. I have always been very strong, and it hurts my feelings not to be able to go into the gym and do the things I did just 4 or 5 years ago. I went in for my first foot surgery early 2019. I was still squatting. I was still leg pressing. I was doing all that great stuff that I loved. It just made me feel so powerful. And now I go into the gym and I watch girls squat what I can't. It just bums me out, Mike. It's just I'm a guy, and being strong was important. But I do believe that I can have strong legs again thanks to the ARX machine. I really do. And this show inspired me to get in there and start training my legs more. That's it.
I'm glad that inspired you. And we do 12,000 workouts a month. Like, there's plenty of other people who are getting inspired to do this, and they don't look like bodybuilders. They don't look like you did in your heyday. They weren't doing 1,500 pounds or whatever you said. You were squatting 700 pounds. If you are a personal trainer, this is a business in a box. This will differentiate you immediately. This will get you better results than what you're getting currently. and you'll be able to prove to your customers that it's happening. If you're a longevity institute, if you're somebody who's just thinking about helping elderly and just want to make sure that you stay healthy for the whole race and not just for a portion of it when you're in your 30s, then this is a 401k for strength. Like, you just do it once a week, keep investing, compound interest comes in, and you live a very long and healthy life. You don't have to worry about osteoporosis. You don't got to worry about diabetes. Like, these things just don't become problems when you just check the box that is resistance exercise. It is truly longevity in a pill, essentially. And we're taking all of the hard variables out of it. How much weight to choose, what sets, reps, all that stuff doesn't matter anymore. Like, we give you a very basic protocol, and as long as your intensity is high enough and the resistance is quality enough, you will get results. And that is the most important takeaway of what we do. Is it is a paradigm shift. Every once in a while, there's one of those technologies that comes in and changes the game. We are that technology. I'm confident of it.
And remember, we did a show last month that showed that once a week training built more muscle and strength than 3 times a week training of a traditional gym protocol against the ARX machine. Like, everybody wants to do the most they can in the shortest period of time. The ARX machine actually makes that possible. And I don't mean these scammy personal trainers out there posting videos on YouTube about, just train 30 seconds a day and come on. You got to challenge the body. Nothing can challenge your body as quickly and safely as an ARX machine. Seriously.
Yeah, go back and listen to the conversation with Lance Dolick if you're listening right now. I mean, we're talking 2.5 times fat loss, 2.5 times body fat percentage improvements, 2 times lean muscle improvements, cardiovascular system, 3.5 times VO max improvements compared to a weight training group that was doing about 70% of 1 rep max. And got all of those benefits in 1/3 the amount of time. So, like, I'm running out of things to point to as to why this is a better way forward. But, like, we just keep proving it. And the best thing for anybody to do right now who's like, I don't know, this guy kind of sounds like he's full of it, please try one. Like, reach out to us, get on a machine. I promise, I'm batting 1,000. No one's ever said this thing is fake once they've tried it.
So if you want to try it, go to arxfit.com/contact. And there's a few hundred of these around the country, and they'll put you in touch with somebody that you can get in there and try it yourself. Do that. Do that at least. Try it. Mike, thanks for being here today, brother. And thank you for being a sponsor of Superhuman Radio. Thank you.
Indeed.
Take care. All right, we're going to take one quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have Cameron George on, and we're going to talk about Kava. Some people say Kava is better than alcohol. It gives you the same euphoric feeling without the destructiveness to your health. But not everybody thinks Kava does anything, and we're going to talk about why that is in just a minute. Stay with me. You are watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. One of the best health hacks there is using an infrared sauna with regularity. But infrared saunas are expensive. You have to assemble them, and they require a great deal of space in your home to dedicate to one. But that's all about to change because I negotiated an amazing deal with Helix, the infrared sauna blanket company, so that every one of my listeners can take advantage of an infrared sauna in their home, apartment, condo, wherever you live. Take it with you. Right now, you can get an infrared sauna blanket for just $469. And if you want, you can break it into 4 interest-free installment payments as well. There is no longer an excuse not to have and use an infrared sauna. Go to shrnetwork.biz/helix. That's HEALIX. Use code SHR. Get this ridiculously inexpensive price now and 45-day risk-free. If you don't like it, send it back. But I promise you, you will love it and you will never want to be without it ever again. Plant medicine has become all the rage for mental optimization. Now there's an ancient plant medicine rapidly growing in popularity that experts believe might just be the alcohol of the future. It's called True Kava. Kava is a natural food-grade elixir that has been used for over 3,000 years by South Pacific Islanders as safe, non-addictive alternative to drugs and alcohol. By naturally boosting the brain's main feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, Kava provides you with both increased relaxation and mental clarity at the same time. True Kava is a new form of stabilized full-spectrum traditional Kava that is third-party lab tested for quality and safety. Go to shrnetwork.biz/True Kava, and that's TRUKAVA, all one word, and use code SHR for 25% off today.
Doc should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
C60, also known as Buckminster fullerene, is the most powerful, most versatile antioxidant in the world. It's been shown in studies to double the lifespan of rodents. We all know the importance of taking antioxidants to slow aging, reduce inflammation, and improve mitochondrial function and energy production. But there are literally hundreds of antioxidants that would cost you thousands of dollars to take every day. I take one. I take C60 from C360 Health. Revive and Rejuvenate are two blends that harness the power of C60. Don't waste another minute. Go to shrnetwork.biz/revive and use the code SHR for 15% off and free shipping inside the United States today. Most people have heard of phytoestrogens, but did you know there are beneficial phytoandrogens? The top source of these is pine pollen. It even contains trace amounts of testosterone and DHEA. If you're looking for a 100% natural testosterone booster, this is worth trying. Lots of men love it, and it even works for women. Lost Empire Herbs offers the highest quality wild harvested non-irradiated pine pollen backed by a 365-day money-back guarantee. It works for you, or you don't have to pay for it with nothing to send back. Go to shrnetwork.biz/lostempire. Use code SHR. Get 15% off your order today. If you'd like a shortcut to better sleep, more energy, and calmer, more stable moods, then you should make sure you're supplementing with Magnesium Daily. Let me tell you why. About 75% of people are magnesium deficient. This deficiency can lead to higher levels of anxiety, irritability, trouble sleeping, and low energy. It can even contribute to foot and leg cramps while you sleep. Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers is the single best magnesium supplement in the world. Simply take 2 capsules before you go to bed, and you'll be amazed by the improvements in your mood and energy levels and how much more rested you feel when you wake up. I take Magnesium Breakthrough every night, and I sleep better because I use it. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use the code SHR10 during checkout to save 10% off and get free shipping. Check it out.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Hey, welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're joined by Cameron George with True Kava. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, Carl. How you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, absolutely.
So, about 5 years ago, I was at an anti-aging convention. A guy came up to me and we were talking, and he says, "How do you sleep?" And I says, "I sleep okay. I'm always looking for ways to sleep better." And he gave me a bottle of Kava. And he said, try these before bed and you'll sleep great. And I tried them. I can't honestly say my sleep tracker showed me anything. And so then a friend of mine says, well, Kava is great. Like if you're going to a party, you don't want to drink. And I took, it required 3 capsules. I took 3 about an hour before I went to the party. Didn't notice anything. I ended up taking 3 more at the party. Didn't notice anything. And I literally still have that bottle in my supplement bin. Never touched it again, never even thought about it again. And I thought, well, this Kava, I don't understand what people are getting all excited about. It's a bust. It doesn't do anything. Like, okay, maybe I'm a non-responder, but I'm not a non-responder to anything that I can think of. Then Tim introduces me to you. And you tell me this story that I want you to tell the audience. So Kava is a plant medicine that's been around for thousands of years. And obviously, if no one felt anything, it wouldn't be around for thousands of years. And I said, what's the secret? So explain the process of how the forerunners of using Kava prepared it versus putting it in a capsule.
Yeah. What you described there is an extremely common tale, with people trying to dive into, this particular compound. It was my story as well. I mean, I got into this whole thing it's been kind of like a pain to purpose journey for me. I mean, I got ridiculously sick with an autoimmune spectrum illness in my early 20s and ended up kind of going through the whole gambit of, exhausting the allopathic model and then functional medicine and the entire thing. And during the process, I developed really bad convulsatory seizures, sometimes, up to 10 a day that I was having. So it was a really nasty situation. I was heavily addicted to benzodiazepine medications, to try to keep those at bay. And I'm sure your listeners are very familiar with those drugs. They're they're some of the most addictive, overly prescribed, drugs that are on the pharmaceutical market currently. And yeah, I mean, they're very effective in the short term, but problem is that they set up this gradient in your body, that down regulates these GABA receptors that are, responsible for the inhibitory process, of relaxing the system and, reducing seizure activity, enhancing sleep. But they deplete the system at the same time, like a pharmaceutical does, or like alcohol would do. They set up a gradient to where you're actually digging into your body's bank account of available neurochemistry, and therefore you set up the gradient in which eventually you run out of those chemicals, and then you go into withdrawal, and you can't even maintain the status quo with those things. That was a huge problem with me.
I want to mention something about benzos for a second.
Yeah.
And then hold that thought. What people don't realize is if they take benzos for anxiety, if they take benzos for a variety of reasons, when the benzo wears off the first time, whatever condition you were taking them for comes back a little stronger. The longer you take the benzos, when they start wearing off, if you're taking benzos for anxiety, let's say your anxiety is a 10, you take a benzo and you're down in the 1, like, I feel calm. Well, when your anxiety comes back because the benzo wears off, comes back as a 12. Mm-hmm. And the longer you take them, your anxiety gets worse and worse and worse. This is why people have such a hard time weaning it off, because they can't. It's like, no, when they wear off, it's worse than it was before. The doctors don't care. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. And it's actually a really simple concept when people, a lot of people, it really is amazing how common it is to take drugs for, neurological symptoms of all kinds, anxiety and depression and cognitive dysfunction. But a lot of people really, I would say most people really don't know exactly how drugs work. They work on all different pathways. If you take a drug like Adderall that enhances cognitive function, it works in the dopamine pathway. These antidepressants, obviously, they work on the serotonergic pathway primarily. And these benzos work on the GABA pathway, where they enhance the influx of, ions through this GABA A, receptor channel, which basically creates an inhibitory effect, which calms down the body. The problem is that with a pharmaceutical, basically it's going in there and it's hacking those receptors to basically dump its available stores of this neurochemistry. So it's almost like borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today. It's like charging credit with your body's own bank account of its neurochemistry. And so it's not like, it's kind of like if I don't have, if I have not enough money to go out and buy a car, I could go out and get a loan today. That doesn't mean that I've solved the problem, because now I owe, the money on the car, and eventually I'm going to have to pay that back with interest. So, that's a situation that people end up in with pharmaceuticals of all kinds. But with benzos, it's just the cost is incredibly great, because GABA is a crucial pathway for maintaining basic stability and even sanity in the system, because it regulates, this sort of stabilizing continuum in the body that stabilizes a lot of the excitatory chemicals and like the stress hormones. So whenever you end up in that ricochet effect where you borrow, and eventually you're in a debt situation, the drug eventually loses its effectiveness, you take it away, and then boom, your anxiety is back, significantly, sometimes 2 to 10-fold. It's a huge problem, right? Because that's, you don't have the ability to even, deal with stress on an even mild to moderate level at that point. So that is, like a huge problem. But basically how I came across, this whole thing with Kava was I was heavily addicted to these drugs, like so many people are. And I was, I was in this situation where I was on huge doses of them for a long period of time, just like in the beginning, charging the credit. I was, it ameliorated my symptoms to, a significant degree in the short term. But then long term, obviously, they were starting to lose their effectiveness, and my seizures were coming back significantly more. And they were already at a lethal point because of the amount of seizures that I was having, the duration of the seizures, and how weak my body was in the state that I was in. So it was a pretty crucial point for me. And so I had to find a strategy off of these medications, but they were really the only thing that was keeping me from being able to sleep or being able to even ingest food, because I was at a point where I was reacting so heavily to everything, food, supplements, medications, that I couldn't take anything without going into a convulsatory reaction or basically a seizure. This is a really crucial situation for me. Years prior, because it took me several years to get to this point, and I had already spent many years delving and scouring medical and scientific literature for every available therapeutic compound, natural and, synthetic, and treatments and therapies, modalities. So I had a pretty good general understanding of, not only standard pharmacology, but ethnopharmacology and plant pharmacology as well. So I kind of knew the litany of substances that were out there, but I had overlooked kava before whenever I was first going down this road of trying to find something that bound to these pathways, because I had tried it just like you had tried it. I had went and bought, several companies of, encapsulated kava products from the health food store. And it basically didn't, the effects weren't, they were basically, akin to what you'd get off of a cup of chamomile tea. So it wasn't nothing, but it was like close to nothing. And for me and my symptoms, it was kind of like shooting a BB gun at a freight train. It was not going to stop it. It wasn't even near powerful enough. But yet, whenever I got in this crucial situation, I started, talking to a few of my contacts, and one was an indigenous islander from the South Pacific, where kava comes from. There's deep, deep roots there. It's been used for 3,000 years as a core part of their culture. They drink it like we drink alcohol. They use it, therapeutically, medicinally, spiritually. But anyways, he was telling me, well, you should definitely try kava. And I said, I've tried kava. And he kind of snickered. He kind of laughed a little bit whenever I told him what I had tried. And he said, that's not real kava, dude, like at all. That's no more kava than a caffeine pill is coffee, but that's not even a great comparison, because at least caffeine pills do something if they give more side effects than coffee. But you basically, that form is an entirely different form that is not even kava by definition. The definition of kava is the full constituent drink mixture of the water extraction of specifically the roots of this plant called Piper methysticum, which is a shrub that grows in this specific part of the world in South Pacific Islands primarily. And it's a preparation, just like coffee is a preparation, right?
I was just going to say that. We don't call it, hey, I'm drinking a coffee bean. We say we drink coffee because coffee is the preparation and liqueur of the bean. So we call kava, we think it's the bean. It has the root. It's not the root. It's the preparation of the root is kava.
Just like wine is a preparation. It's a pseudo-medicinal preparation. And there are all kinds of, or even, like ayahuasca or something like that, these really strong plant medicines from the Amazon. It's the mixture that's been given that name. And it's basically that preparation that's been prepared through natural means that don't denature or destabilize the natural composition of the full spectrum of active living constituents within that root material, basically.
Well, I have to believe kava, now that we know what I'm talking about, the liquid, is actually a preparation that enables the components and constituents of that root to do the things that we expect them to do. You could chew a coffee bean. It's not a cup of coffee, It's a big difference.
Well, it's not in the same way. And an even more important point possibly is that, if you take, because you can buy, synthetic isolated, caffeine powder on the internet, you can buy it off Amazon. And if you were to take a whole bottle of that stuff, it could actually harm you, to the ER. And many people get all kinds of side effects. And, it's, the safety is compromised and the effects are just different. It's not as much of a clean feeling. It's very, very different. In that form, because they use solvents to basically isolate one main constituent, or they synthesize it in the lab or whatever. But basically, they're taking it out of that sort of entourage effect, that is present in the complete mixture from that plant material. Plants, like we have to remember, are living organisms, like humans are living organisms. So they have a vast array of symbiotic, living constituents that work together, just like the cells, hormones, active constituents in our bodies, that kind of work together to kind of form this symphony of living harmony. And in this case, the living therapeutic effect of a plant medicine. And so it's the same thing with coffee. It's the same thing with, other preparations. Another actual comparison that's really good is coca tea, from South America. It's very different than cocaine, right? Now, I mean, kava is safer than both.
I didn't even know they drink coca tea. I only ever snorted cocaine when I was a kid, so I didn't even know that existed.
So I think we've all been there, but so we all know how dangerous cocaine is. It's one of the nastiest substances you can put in your body. But, coca tea is the natural sort of water extracted preparation from just the pure natural leaves. And they drink coca tea, the indigenous people in Peru drink it daily. And nobody's robbing convenience stores. No one is even really addicted to the substance because in that form, it has a built-in sort of natural modulation of the active constituents that it creates in the body. It doesn't create this depletion of the dopamine that sets up that sort of bar from tomorrow pay for today.
More. Now I need more. Now I need more. Right. Exactly.
So these natural medicines have, because they came from the same ecology that we came out of, human beings come out of the natural ecology. We're part of the living environment. The same sort of intelligence has constructed them. And so the ones that agree with humans well, they don't, create this contradictory effect in human biology that creates this sort of traffic jam or this messing up of the assembly line of biochemical processes that confuses the whole thing and causes it to try to self-correct, ricochet in the opposite direction, deplete the system. It's not hacking it. It's basically it's working with the body.
And in fact, I hate the term biohacking.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get into it, but I hate the term biohacking. I don't like it at all. But anyway, so what is the process? It's a long process. How do you make kava out of that particular plant root?
Right, exactly. So just, to kind of sum it up real quick, there are two categories of kava products. There is traditional kava, which is what I've been sort of alluding to, which is this water and pressure extracted, full preparation, just like coffee, but with kava. And then there are kava-like extract products. And that's basically the only thing that's on, the American market outside of what we're doing right now. And that's basically all the capsules, pastes, liquids, tea bags, that basically use either chemical solvents or even ethanol or alcohol to like grab onto the food.
Separate the kava lactone. Right.
Yeah. And, the problem with that is at least with caffeine, when you isolate caffeine, you get effects still, but with side effects. Kava, you actually lose most of the dimensions of the therapeutic effects when you do that, because it takes away all of the supportive constituents that increase the bioavailability, the half-life, and add multiple other mechanisms across multiple receptors. So whenever you extract in those ways, or you get those capsules, you literally cut down the effects intensity by about 90% in most cases. And then you actually lose some effects altogether. Like you don't get any of the mood boosting effects that are always published about with kava that people that make it a good alcohol alternative, right? You just get a mild sedating chamomile tea-like effect with the extracts. So those by definition are not kava. They are kava-like extracts. So that's the second category. So what we're talking about is true kava, which is why we name the company such, is that true kava is this indigenous preparation. That's where all the fame has come from. That's where, that's the substance that has been seen as sacred in the South Pacific Islands, that has been used literally for everything: weddings, funerals, spiritual ceremonies, social gatherings. And basically how they prepare it is they take the roots of this shrub called Piper methysticum with these beautiful heart-shaped leaves, and that's the kava plant. Mm-hmm. And basically, first of all, you have to select certain strains. Certain strains are wild strains that are not well consumed by humans, and that's an important point too for quality and safety. There's a category of strains called noble varieties that have a certain chemical composition that we control every step of the process, and we test for the whole thing, that are basically have been dialed in over hundreds, thousands of years for daily consumption. So they have a good chemical composition that's very well tolerated and very medicinal to humans. And you can use other strains for acute medicinal application, but that are sometimes pack a huge punch. But these are the strains that are really food quality, food grade, in the United States and abroad. But basically, you take the roots of this plant, and traditionally, indigenous people, when they first started using it, would actually chew it. There would be one person appointed in the tribe, in the villages, in these islands,
and spit it out. Right? They would chew it and spit it out. Yeah.
Yeah, they would chew it. They would normally they would appoint the young people to chew it for the elders, and they would spit it into a huge bowl and mix it up. And for obvious reasons, we've moved away from that. But wait
a minute. So we have enzymes in our saliva. Did those enzymes contribute something that helped chaperone the product?
We do believe that they certainly did, because anyone who's experienced with kava knows that that's a really strong way of preparing it. However, we found that if you apply heat and if you apply enough pressure, you can duplicate the same potency and get basically the same chemotype of active constituents out of it as well. But they didn't have a lot of means of generating heat back then. And a lot of times heat is a problematic thing for plant extraction. But with kava, the kava lactones and most active constituents are really stable. if you're preparing dried kava. If you're trying to do fresh kava, there's an extra level of potency. That's kind of a different discussion. So those are, different degrees. So there's different ways that we prepare, but it all stays within the range of using heat, pressure, or enzymatic activity. There are no solvents that are used, because a solvent basically dissolves certain constituents, leaves others. So it's a way of isolating and
and a lot of times a solvent leaves a residue of itself.
Yes. Yes, which is hugely problematic if it's a chemical solvent, like hexane or like acetone. And if it's alcohol, it's not hugely problematic in that standpoint, but it still denatures it, cuts down the potency. And there are extra plant defense compounds that are in high amounts in the aerial parts of the plant, which is why you don't consume the aerial parts of the plant. Right. But you do consume the roots, and there are low amounts of these compounds. They're actually very medicinal, not of the most egregious ones, but these mild plant defense compounds in the roots. But they're in very small amounts, and they're in a good matrix balance with the active constituents that balance out their effects.
Do they convey some sort of benefit in those low, very, very low amounts? Do they convey something to the euphoric effect?
Yes, there's the highest level of excitement in the ethnopharmacological sort of community, sector of the scientific community with kava is actually at managing metabolic diseases and cancers. And these compounds called flavocavanes, that are these little plant defense compounds that are actually well tolerated by humans, but they can cause side effects and symptoms if they're in really high amounts and imbalance with the lactones. But they basically act as natural chemotherapy agents in the scientific literature. There's droves of scientific literature on this. So basically, it's actually really amazing, because they're quite toxic to cells that can't respond from an antioxidant standpoint, but they're non-toxic to healthy cells, right? And so unlike actual chemotherapy, obviously, that's indiscriminately toxic to all cells, what has been shown is that, these agents actually have an apoptotic effect on unhealthy, senescent cells, basically zombie cells and precancerous cells.
Really?
So,
we're always looking for ways to extinguish senescent cells. So what you're saying to me is kava prepared properly, the historic way of preparing it, actually has a compound in it that could vanquish senescent cells?
Yes, and actually, it's actually very well studied. There's droves of literature on these, what they're called chalcones. But the specific ones are flavocavanes A, B, and C within kava, and they work in synergy in this matrix. They work best when present with the other constituents, because the other constituents help with the bioavailability, help with the breakdown of them, and help them to be shuttled into the cell properly. But there are certain kava lactones that actually increase what's called, this pathway called AMPK, in the system, which is the cellular autophagy inducing pathway. And then the flavocavanes come in and actually have an apoptotic effect on these cells as well too. So it's like a 1-2 punch. And what's been shown is this one kava lactone called yangonin helps to sensitize certain cancer cells, or most have these cancer cells that have been looked at, against against the effects of the flavocavanes by through the AMPK pathway and suppression of the mTOR pathway, et cetera. So it's actually that's actually one of the most exciting places with kava research. So I mean, we've got lots of literature of all types, cell cultures, et cetera. But what piqued the interest of that particular category was there was a large scale epidemiological study that came out in 2000 that looked at the inverse relationship between kava consumption in the South Pacific and cancer incidences. And in all 8 countries that were looked at, there was a direct inverse relationship between cancer instances of all kinds in kava consumption that was basically consistent across every country studied. So basically, the more kava that was consumed, the less cancer. So that piqued the interest. So then this whole drove of study came out, and we now have all these mechanisms. And we know it's just been known forever in the South Pacific that people who smoke have a much lower likelihood of developing lung cancer.
And you suspect it's because of their consumption of kava?
There's we can't, obviously it's the process of science, the process of building evidence, right? But there is really, really good mounting evidence from multiple angles, to suggest that it's making a very strong contribution on that front for sure.
You know what's funny about that is because it's it's so frustrating to me, when people talk about the Okinawans. Oh, the Okinawans live so long, and I say, well, they have different genetics. I say it's not, and everybody focuses on their diet. Oh, it's their diet. Now, granted, kava may be part of their diet, but they don't talk about the kava. They talk about, oh, well, they don't eat any red meat, and so everybody should abandon red meat. This is why science today has become scientism. It's more like religion. You have a dogma, and now you're going to search out just the things that support your position. It's very sad. But anyway, I digress. So tell me about True Kava. So True Kava honors this tradition of making kava the way it's been made for thousands of years. I want to start taking it just because of what you told me about mTOR AMPK and its effect on senescent cells, because I take rapamycin every other week, 6 milligrams for that same. I could just be taking kava every day.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, it's, people who consume kava over a long period of time have not only marked improvements in, mental and psychological health, but also improvements in metabolic markers really across the board. Really, it's actually really amazing. And, this has always been observed, and the indigenous people of the South Pacific would use different language. Obviously, they wouldn't use a lot of scientific terminology, but they would say, well, yeah, like this, like we use it for everything, because it's an amazing substance that breathes life into a person. And they see it mainly, its main claim to fame, or its main signature, both in the natural ecology and the scientific community and also by the indigenous people, and from an experiential standpoint, is the kava is a broad spectrum protective organism. It's a protective.
It's an adaptogen. In other words, you're saying it's an adaptogen.
Yes. But it has more of a, than standard adaptogens that, basically are going to modulate things. It has more of a direct, even acutely protective aspect to it from a neuroprotective standpoint, because it hits on, basically every, neuro and tissue protective pathway that we know of, from induction of the GABAT system, the reduction of glutamate. It's a COX-1, COX-2 inhibitor. Obviously, it activates these hormesis pathways through the antioxidant response elements, increases levels of glutathione, et cetera. It also is a sodium calcium channel blocker, which is why it was so good on the seizure front as well too. It has every, basically neuro and tissue protective pathway that we're familiar with, which is why it's so great on that front. But it also, all these metabolic effects and shifting the body into ketosis and everything is also a protective adaptive pathway in times when food is not present as well. And it, not only does it help to, increase the body's, production of ketones through AMPK and fat burning and all this, but it actually helps to create more dopamine in the brain by acting as a monoamine oxidase inhibitor that doesn't deplete the dopamine, which is really amazing. It's non-addictive.
So this would be beneficial for people with PD then, right? People with Parkinson's disease may find some benefit from using kava.
Well, they have from the neuroprotective standpoint and from the dopaminergic standpoint. We don't have like a huge patient population to draw from on Parkinson's specifically, but in theory, and I definitely have talked to and seen some people that have benefited quite a bit, and it's really amazing because, kava is able to kind of turn on the brain, but yet relax it at the same time. So a lot of people use it as a coffee alternative because it kind of elicits a state of calm, enhanced focus, right? Without interfering with your faculties, it improves cognitive function while relieving anxiety. Like as were benzodiazepines, relieve anxiety, but they muddle up the brain chemistry and they reduce your cognition, your short-term memory.
They screw your sleep. They do everything that you could possibly imagine that's wrong with you. They cause amnesia effects. Okay, I want to jump to a couple things. First of all, at what point does kava become euphoric? Larger doses?
Yeah, so kava has sort of a titrated, sort of spectrum of, effects, and applications. At small dosages like we have in our core products, because what we're doing with, the brand right now before we heavily go into the medical space is we're trying to introduce a lifestyle brand where we can basically integrate kava into every layer of the infrastructure to where everybody can tolerate it and make it maximally versatile. So these products are like food grade products, to be at a very controlled dosages that's basically equal to what would be one shell or one cup that you would drink in the islands, basically. And you can choose to drink more if you want to, but it's at a very tolerable level for basically one serving, whether it be one can or one shot or one dose of the oil. So basically at that dosage, it's just a very light, relaxing sort of nootropic sort of effect, right? That doesn't interfere with your faculties really at any dosage, to any substantial degree, but it's not even distracting at all. Even kids can take, these dosages, both clinically and just like, in a standard fashion. So it's, it really is just sort of a really, light effect that does wake up the brain and increase the mood, but it's not really euphoric at that dosage.
Right.
Now you double and triple that dosage, especially quadruple it, about, 4 shell servings of this. Now you start to get into the more sort of, mood lifting to where it's actually euphoric, but it's not, I don't want that word to scare people because a lot of times people associate euphoria with both addiction and inebriation
and loss of control. And yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
But Kava, it has a category of its own, the way it affects human neurochemistry and the way it affects human consciousness. It's able to elicit a euphoric effect similar to alcohol in high dosages, but while increasing your sort of engaged faculties, not affecting your higher brain function,
Right.
your ability to like your fine motor skills, basically. So basically, the effect at a Kava bar is you're engaged, you're relaxed, you're able to connect easier with people, but yet you feel totally like yourself, right? So it's like you get that euphoria in high dosages, but yet you're not out of sorts. You're not in an altered state, which is really unique for a substance. So euphoria, even with Kava, once you get up to like 4 servings and up, especially up to 4 to 10 servings, which is totally safe with food grade Kava, you can get to a pretty intense euphoria, but it's still a calm, enhanced state of natural sobriety.
It's manageable. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have several products right now that we're offering our audience, right? And I'm going to put this up here. So those are the Kava shots. Is that 1 serving or 2 servings?
So each shot is 1 serving.
All right. So, but you also have something. Oh, and let me do this. Go to shrnetwork.biz/TrueKava, TRUKAVA, code SHR for 25% off, or scan that QR code on your screen if you're watching the show today. Now, what about the little dropper bottles? What's in there?
Yes. Okay. So the dropper that was actually our initial product. That's going to be our most versatile, easy to consume for all ages. You got 30 doses in a bottle type of product that still is produced with traditional Kava methods, but it's at a dosage and concentration that's a little bit lighter than the other forms, the drink forms. And that's just meant to be like, it kind of has a leveling off effect where if you take more than like 4 or 5, it's not going to keep intensifying. So you can take it at any time of the day without any of like a distracting or overly, relaxing effect. And, that's the product that, practitioners use with kids most and everything like that. And it's the product that 1 bottle will get you 30 doses. You can carry it around with you. You can put it in your coffee. Coffee enhances the absorption. Caffeine enhances the absorption, and it kind of takes the edge off coffee with some people. So people who drink coffee and get anxiety, a lot of people use it instead of coffee. I mean, I do. But so there's that thing. You can put it in coffee or tea, or just put it in your food or on salads or anything. It's an all-purpose sort of food additive, almost like you'd use an MCT oil. It's a supplement, really, of food, right? That you can add as an all-purpose sort of relaxant, and not worry about taking too much of it or anything like that. So it's the entry-level product that's most versatile, very, very balanced. Very, very nice, light, relaxing feeling, in higher dosages, more of the nootropic effect.
So Taylor C says 2 things, and Natalie's not online right now, but I'm going to get with her about this. I'm not sure what he means. He says cold pressed full spectrum is fantastic. I prefer it to the shot, but this is a fantastic product. So I'm guessing he's saying that the eye drop. See, everybody in the company got free samples from you. They used it all, and all I have left are these little eyedropper bottles. So I'm going to try it tonight because I'm going out for St. Patty's Day, and I don't want to drink alcohol, so I'm actually going to use it tonight. Thank you. But yeah, Taylor also says that he loves True Kava, but the discount code is capped out, though. I don't know if he's talking about our discount code or what, but I'll get with Natalie and have her check that for sure, Taylor. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to use that tonight. So what is it, 1 full milliliter, 1 full eyedropper?
I would start with 2 full droppers full, and you can take, if you can take more than that. There is, important thing with Kava that's good for new users to know is that there is a crescendoing effect whenever you first start Kava. So there's a loading period that everybody kind of has to go through. Well, not everybody, so basically, Kava, because of the effects that it has on the receptors, on the neurochemistry, it's kind of opposite of a pharmaceutical. You know how we talked about with the pharmaceutical, that it's not biologically compatible, but today, the whole thing. Kava is actually being known in the scientific literature now as more of like an anti-drug, because it actually, what we've shown in the literature is that with long-term effects, we get an increase in GABA receptor density, and it upregulates those systems while giving an acute therapeutic effect that relieves the symptoms, which was, for me, was a miracle in getting off of my benzos to save my life. It's a long story short on that, but basically, because of that, what they call a reverse tolerance effect, because it's repleting the system and upregulating, the weakest Kava will ever be is the first time you take it, which is the opposite of a pharmaceutical. Strongest it'll ever be is the first time you take it, and then tolerance ensues. You deplete the system, and the amount of available GABA and things go down from there. So Kava, if you don't feel it the first time, I always tell people to give it, the 30-day Kava challenge, and no matter what level that you feel it at whenever you first take it, you will feel it significantly more after taking it kind of regularly for 30 days.
I'm going to start tonight. I'm really excited. I got to tell you something. I feel like I'm part of the audience. I'm really excited about Kava because I have just given up caffeine and coffee because it's hurt me. I abused caffeine. I was using 1,500 milligrams a day for years, and I actually noticed that now my brain is depleted of dopamine as a result of borrowing dopamine. Tomorrow's dopamine today, and first of all, Taylor C says the SHR code says reach capacity. I think that's on your website. Just for so you might want to look into that, okay?
Yeah, we'll get that taken care of.
Okay, but the other thing is, have you ever heard of a drug called apomorphine? It's not related to morphine, the opioid. Apomorphine. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, it's heard of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, what science is discovering is a lot of men have erectile dysfunction that has nothing to do with the actual function of their penis. So, the traditional PDE5 inhibitors don't work for them. They have severely depleted dopamine levels, and dopamine is a critical molecule for libido, sexual desire, and drive, and reward, and all those things. And these guys can't have sex, not because their penis isn't functioning properly, because of plaque or whatever, because the PDE5 inhibitors do nothing for them. It's because they are so low on dopamine in their brain that they can't get aroused any longer. So apomorphine is now being added to many PDE5 inhibitors to help a guy get an erection and have sex. Well, women who lose their libido as they go through menopause, it appears that they also start to lose dopamine in the brain, and they lose desire, and they lose libido, and they're saying women take apomorphine and they want to have sex again. So what you're talking about, Kava and dopamine, may make it even more popular amongst older couples who still want to be engaged in love and sex.
Very, very important point. It's one of the many points that we could touch on. There's just so many. That's one thing that actually Kava is very well known for, is the enhancement of libido, and that's because of its natural effects on dopamine. But the good thing is so the problem with treating that issue pharmaceutically, dopamine insufficiency is an epidemic issue today, right? Not just with men, but with women too as well, because we're so overstimulated with this sort of rat race sort of onslaught of sort of, pleasure stimulus in our environment that basically.
But also we over-caffeinate ourselves day in and day out. That has to have something to do with it.
We over-caffeinate ourselves. Social media also plays a role because we're constantly getting, obsessive dopamine hits every day, all day long. And we can choose where we want to navigate in reality, and we can choose to induce a dopamine hit that would either people do it through pornography or through social media or any of these things where we have basically the ability to get a stimulus of our choice at our fingertips, an image, whether it be an image or a video or an action like at social media, like trying to get posts and likes and all this kind of stuff. All of that stuff is stimulation that releases dopamine in the brain. And it's really unnatural to be able to manipulate our environment to that degree to be able to get those hits, right? And so after a while, you exhaust that system and those receptors, and it's harder to experience pleasure of any kind and even to feel good about life and have energy, focus, and motivation. And then on top of that, when people start to get depleted, then they start to become addicted to psychostimulants just to borrow more, to charge more credit, right? When the money is low, it's like, oh, get another loan, get another loan. So it starts with caffeine, and a lot of times it ends up in things like Adderall use, right? Which is at epidemic levels as well, too, on college campuses. And that is a huge problem. So if you're using drugs to stimulate dopamine of any kind, that is going to end up most likely being a problem long-term, because again, borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today. The thing that's so magical about natural compounds like kava is that they have this repleting effect, and they have this non-depletatory effect on the system that doesn't further damage the dopamine system, and that actually helps you shift into deeper sleep to where you can actually recover your brain chemistry a little bit better as well too. So kava is one of those things, just like as a food commodity, really belongs in the same place as coffee, as far as how many people use it in the world, and how many people in today's stress, overly dopamine stimulated age really need a restorative compound like this instead of an exhaustive compound like coffee.
I agree. This is so exciting. I can't believe it. Taylor, just to let you know, Cameron fixed it so your code will work, and they will remedy it for everybody else later on. I hope we don't have to change the code because it's out there on social media. If we could just uncap the SHR code, is that possible?
Yeah. I'll have my team look at it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out what happens. So,
Cameron, I'm so excited to go home and take my True Kava tonight. I really am. I'm going to use it every day. Like I said, everybody drank the shots. You sent some carbonated drinks that you're going to be releasing soon.
Yeah.
And it's like, where's the, we love it. It's great. We took it. And they said, but here, there's this. And I have these 3 little bottles with eyedroppers in them. And I says, what is this? Is this the same thing? I'm going to start using it every day. I'm going to start out with 2 tonight before going out to dinner. Tomorrow morning, when I first wake up, I'm going to take 2. Should I just take 2 throughout for the next 30 days and see what it does?
Yeah, or you can even dose higher than that. I mean, I would, like, if you want to get through the loading period faster, I would take 2 to 4, at a time, and you can definitely do that.
I macro dose. I don't trip. I used to trip a lot when I was a young man. I don't trip now, but I do take about a half gram of mushrooms, typically once a week, and I meditate. It puts me in the most meditative state. I can meditate for hours. Would kava be complementary to the mushrooms?
100%. That's a whole nother thing, but basically, in short, kava is an entheogen. So that's one thing that a lot of times I don't get to touch on that because a lot of people are.
Let's do that. Let's do that for our next interview.
Okay, great. But
that's our next interview. Leaping off.
In short answer to your question, yes, it's very complementary. In fact, it can even take the edge off of the proclivity towards anxiety or bad trips in higher dosages. A lot of people know that if they take a benzodiazepine whenever they're having a bad experience that goes a little bit too out of control, it brings it down. But you don't want to do that. It's like. So a lot of people at music festivals and things like you're taking it recreationally know that. And because kava affects that, it enhances it and makes it smoother. But so it has entheogenic effects that are kind of like microdosing in high dosages with kava that almost anyone can tolerate, which is something I'm so excited about. So,
I have to tell this story because I'm 63 years old, but I was a young man at one time. And I tripped a lot all through high school. And even into my about 19, 20 years old, I still tripped once in a while. Mm-hmm. But I went to see Kiss at Madison Square Garden with a guy who was watching the show before, Steven Schmidt, my friend Jimmy, and a guy named Dougie. And I did 2 hits of blotter acid, and we smoked a bag of angel dust. Now, these are not complimentary drugs because I don't remember anything about the concert. I don't remember anything. I drove there and back. All I remember is at one point in time, the stage was engulfed in flames because they were playing Firehouse. Kiss, one of their signature songs, and they had all these pyrotechnics going off. And I literally came out of my trip. and then shortly thereafter, I went, I'm tired of this. And I went back into my trip. I don't remember, but the mixture of LSD in high doses and angel dust is not recommended from Carl. Let you know that right now. That's it.
The LSD by itself, I think, would be way better.
Oh, it always was. I love tripping. I did, at least. I don't do it. But like I said, a half a gram gets me someplace where I really enjoy myself. Look, you are fascinating. You have a beautiful mind. I'm wondering if the Kava is part of the reason that you are so lucid and clear about all this stuff. I mean, you have a beautiful mind regardless of the product. And I want to have you back on so we could talk about the other qualities of Kava that we didn't cover today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always down for conversations. Yeah, for sure.
And those of you listening, shrnetwork.biz/true Kava, use the code SHR for 25% off. His team will get that code fixed. If it doesn't work, message them. And then, of course, those of you watching, just scan the QR code in front of you, and you'll be transported right to the page. Cameron, George, thank you so much for both being a sponsor and being here today. And I can't wait to try my Kava tonight.
Oh, yeah. Carl, thanks so much for having me, man. Thanks.
All right. Talk soon. All right. So that's it. We're off the air tomorrow. I got lots of editing work to do in the studio, but I will be here. But we will see you Monday with another episode of Superhuman Radio. This was a great show today. Please share today's show. You never know who you're going to help by sharing a show. And we'll see you Monday with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you. I'm breaking in to let you know that the code does in fact work. His team already looked into it. Use the code SHR and it works for 25% off. Okay, Monday. See you.